Thank you, Barbara, and thank you to the audience members who asked the question. You know, it was a very difficult day this past year, Sunday, when we put up for an override vote. Actually, both the governor's veto of basic health care for Minnesotans who earn under $8,000 a year, who are chronically ill. And it was a heartbreaking day as we listened to those speeches on the House floor and could not convince one of our Republican colleagues to join us. Now, things have changed a little bit. Every single Democrat voted for that override in the Minnesota House with passionate speeches about caring for fellow Minnesotans. I do believe things changed a little bit when Governor Pawlenty announced that he would not be seeking re-election. We have partners who are working right now to see if we can build a new GAMC to replace old GAMC to really serve the clients even better, serve the clients who need the services better. I think that should be one of the values that we're looking for. Can we build a better benefit set and be able to replace that and put that up for an override? Because I don't believe Governor Pawlenty is going to turn towards the poorest Minnesotans and sign that bill. The other piece of it is, I think that it's important for you to know we did put up that progressive taxation bill that was worked on in conference committee and that Tom Bakk worked on and that Ann Linczewski worked on, and we could not override that as well. So this is going to need the leadership of a governor to be able to get the needed progressive, stable revenue into our state that we need, and it's also going to need a governor who actually knows that there are Minnesotans who earn under $8,000 a year who will not stop getting sick, who need the care that we can provide as a state. It is something that we need to do. It is a moral imperative, and we are working our very hardest to do it this session.
Well, I know something about that question. We as Minnesotans have to have an honest conversation. We have deep problems that Tim Pawlenty's leaving us with, a sea of red ink. We are all going to have to be willing to participate in the solution to this problem. We are going to have to pull together as Minnesotans. There are not enough wealthy people in this state to solve this problem. And I passed that progressive fourth tier on the income tax, but I tell you how much money it raises. In fact, if you use, I think the House's number was $300,000 in a household. There's 38,500 filers in that bracket out of 2 million. 38,500. If you gave them the highest income tax rate in the nation, which is Hawaii, at 11%, you can raise $1 billion. $1 billion. What we need to do as Minnesotans is have an honest conversation about the state's challenges, and we're all going to have to be willing to pitch in. The problems are too big that Tim Pawlenty is leaving us with that we can tax somebody else. You know, I called Governor Al Quie in earlier this summer because I wanted to visit with him about, he was very courageous in that 81-82 recession because he put an income tax surcharge on everybody, a Republican. He sealed his political career, his future, to do the right thing to get us out of that horrible recession and budget challenges we were in 1981 and 82. And I wanted to find out what his reflection on that was, because it was the end of his career. He did the hard work, and the next governor is going to have to do really hard work and be very courageous also, because the problems are too big to be solved on the backs of somebody else. That's the honest conversation we have to have as Minnesotans.
When I held my last news conference as a senator, after Mike Hatch had lost narrowly in 2006, I said that I was very likely to run for governor in this year, and I've kept that suggestion, put it into a promise. I left the Senate for essentially the same reason Barack Obama sought the executive branch, Hillary Clinton sought the executive branch, Joe Biden gave up 32 years of seniority in the Senate to join the executive branch, because with all due respect to the legislators here who do outstanding work and who have an essential partnership with the governor in the state, the president in Washington, the executive branch is where you lead. And I want to see results. I've been involved in government through the years I've described. I want to make a difference now for Minnesota, not after 20 or 30 or 40 more years in the Senate, which get to the level of seniority necessary, which I don't think the Lord's going to grant me, and I don't think the people of Minnesota would grant me. I want a chance to lead the state now. The state is in crisis now. I believe I can offer not only the ideas for where Minnesota needs to go, but the proven strength of leadership that is going to be necessary. You know, some people said, I remember Jesse Ventura made a big deal of the fact, well, he'd never, worked in state government prior to becoming governor. And of course, there's a case in point for why you want people with experience. But I say, if you got on a now formerly Northwest, now Delta airline flight, and somebody says, pilot gets on and says, this is going to be a different kind of flight. I've never flown an airplane before. You're not exactly going to feel more comfortable. I think this state, as I say, is in crisis. I don't think we have time to wait around for somebody to learn the job. I think we need somebody with executive branch experience, which I bring, which no one else here has at the state level. I know how government should work. I know how to make it work, working with all of you, because I know you're the ones who do make it work, and make it work very well when you're given the leadership to do so. And I'm going to throw out those political hacks that Tim Pawlenty put in there. We're sitting on their high fives and get them out of government and put the leadership back in your hands, and we'll make the state work again.
There are times when it's good to have conflict, and as we all learned in 2006, there are times when it's not good to have conflict. One of the things that I want to give credit to our former Attorney General, Mike Hatch, for is that as an Attorney General, he was willing to get into a lot of conflict. And that produced some really good cases. That did some things that were very positive for us and for our state. Unfortunately, we know that when you run for governor, it's not always good to get into a lot of conflict. And unfortunately, in a year when Democrats won across the board, very sadly, some of his greatest strengths, which had been a real positive thing for us in the state, wound up creating conflicts at the end of the governor's race that I think most of us would agree in part meant that we lost our opportunity to win the governor's race. And that's a sad thing for all of us. And I'm sure it was very sad for the former Attorney General. One of the things that everyone has to do when they run for office is you got to do research. We've all obviously done a lot of research on the governor's office and on the things that go on there. And one of the pieces of research that became clear to me was that the former Attorney General wanted somebody else to be the Attorney General. We all know that. And AFSCME learned firsthand about how they deal with some of those conflicts with the President Attorney General. And the choice that I had, and I certainly wasn't happy about how all things were handled, and you learn through your mistakes and experiences, was I going to have a conflict that was potentially going to do damage to an entire ticket. And where I was prepared and willing to stand up to Tim Pawlenty and make sure that we did the things that we needed to do so that you got the revenue for public service and for education in schools, in the summer of 2006, that was not a time to have that conflict. And it was better for me to not care more about myself than about everybody else. And I stepped back. And unfortunately, while that conflict went away, others didn't, and we lost the governor's race. Now I want to stand up and be your leader to make sure we have someone who does work cooperatively and who makes sure that we're going to win the next election.
Well, certainly one of the advantages of starting my campaign early was I did have to keep up on my day job and keep getting that done. And so it's given me the opportunity to spend my nights and weekends traveling the state and certainly learning and listening and really getting an in-depth kind of perspective on issues that perhaps I hadn't had to deal with before, meeting people I hadn't had the privilege of meeting before, and going to places in Minnesota that I hadn't had the privilege of being before. So I think that's a tremendous advantage, is that for me this was a marathon, not a sprint. I have run a number of marathons, and for me it works best not to start out by going out for a 10-mile run. You start with the 3-mile runs, and that for my campaign that's been very much the strategy, is start out early, start out slow, keep the day job working, talk, listen, learn, read, absorb, think, and that's the way I've approached this. Was there supposed to be a disadvantage?
I don't know. Is there?
Well, it certainly has been going on longer for me than anybody else.
So basically, no.
No.